Dear students, welcome to Web Technologies video lecture series. In today's video, we are going to discuss JavaScript. I am going to introduce JavaScript and I am going to explain how to declare a variable in JavaScript. That is today's topics are introduction to JavaScript and to variables in JavaScript. Lecture outcomes. Here, after completion of these lectures, students will be able to explain what is JavaScript, why we need to study the JavaScript, what are its advantages and the disadvantages of JavaScript, and how to declare variables in JavaScript. First, we will start our lecture with discussing features. Why JavaScript is called as lightweight. We are very familiar with the word lightweight. Why we call JavaScript as a lightweight? So, if you look at the feature, why we call as a lightweight? Because it is made for data handling at browser only. And second reason is it is not a general purpose language. So it has limited set of libraries. And another reason for calling JavaScript as a lightweight, it means for client-side execution and two for web applications. So these are the reasons to call it as a lightweight. Next one is next feature is dynamic typing. JavaScript supports dynamic typing, which means types of the variables are defined based on the value that we are going to store in them. For example, if you declare a variable x, then you can store either a string or a number type value. This is known as dynamic typing. Next one is object-based. This supports OOPS concepts. That is encapsulation, inheritance, class, objects, all those. Next one is functional style. Why we will call JavaScript as a functional style? Why? Because JavaScript uses a functional approach. Even objects are created from the constructor functions, and each constructor function represents unique object type. The platform independent, which means simply you can write the JavaScript once and run it anywhere and anytime. That is, in general, we can say JavaScript applications, you can write JavaScript applications and run them on any platform or any browser. without affecting the output of the JavaScript. Prototype based. JavaScript is a prototype based scripting language. This means JavaScript uses prototypes instead of classes or inheritance. In JavaScript, we define object prototype and then more objects can be created using this object prototype. So this is not happens in Java. Interpreted. JavaScript is an interpreted language, which means the script written inside JavaScript is processed line by line. These scripts are interpreted by JavaScript interpreter, which is a built-in component of any web browser. Next one, asynchronous. Asynchronous, this means JavaScript supports promise, which enables asynchronous request, wherein a request is initiated and JavaScript does not wait for this response, which at a time blocks the request processing. Next one is asynchronous. Next one, directly we are going to discuss advantages of JavaScript. JavaScript has various advantages. Because of these advantages, it became more useful as a scripting languages. Some of the advantages of JavaScript are JavaScript makes web pages more interactive and dynamic. That is, we can give input and JavaScript, that is, web page can respond. This is interactive. And dynamic means JavaScript, we are very clear from beginning of the classes, that is from first class itself we have discussed it. JavaScript is used to create a dynamic web pages. Dynamic web page means whenever, every time we visit that page, the content of that pages are changed. Such type of web pages we will develop by using the JavaScript. That with help of JavaScript, our web pages give immediate feedback to the users that they would not have to reload the page. Immediate response is there from web page. So we will develop such web pages by using the JavaScript. We use JavaScript to perform certain actions. That actions based on the user interact with the web page. Okay, we will perform certain actions by using the events generated by the users by interacting with web page, like mouse click or form submit or button click and many more. We will save burden on server by using JavaScript. This is because we are going to validate user inputs before submitting the data to the server. The validation is done at, browser side or at client side, you can say. So we are reducing the burden on the server. Next, JavaScript can be used to store client-side cookies. And it can be used to, JavaScript can be used to make asynchronous HTTP asynchronous HTTP calls. Limitations of JavaScript. JavaScript has certain limitations. They are Java and other general purpose programming languages. JavaScript is not capable to write multi-threading or multi-processor code. So we are very clear from what do you mean by multi-threading from Java subject that we have studied in earlier. Next one is JavaScript can't be used to develop networking related applications. Later, Node.js came into picture, Node.js, which can be used for developing applications related to network. Next disadvantage or limitation is JavaScript can only be used on client side. That is, we can use JavaScript for front-end development, not back-end. JavaScript is processed purely in web browser. If someone disables JavaScript in their browser, no JavaScript code will be processed. JavaScript opens up a lot of doors for hackers. Next, how to add JavaScript to your HTML file? There are two ways by which we can add JavaScript to our HTML file. First one is internal JS, second one is external JS. In internal JS, we write JavaScript code or JavaScript, or we will add JavaScript directly to HTML file. How we will going to add JavaScript to HTML file in internal? That is, we will write the code, JavaScript code inside the script tag. And this script tag can be placed in head or body tag. This is based on our requirements. We can keep that script tag either inside head or body tag. The second way is external JS. We can write JavaScript code and save that file with the .js extension, and we link this file inside head tag of HTML file, in which we want this code like CSS files. How we have added CSS files to variables. There are four ways to declare a JavaScript variable: using var, using let, using constant, using nothing. What is a variable? Variables are containers for storing certain data. Just example. In first case, x equal to 5. Here we are declaring and initializing a variable. Initializing a variable in a JavaScript. where x equal to 5. X is a variable. We are storing the value 5 inside it. This is declaration and initialization of a variable in JavaScript. Where y equal to 6. 6, the value 6 is stored in a variable y. Where z equal to x plus y. We are adding the value stored in x and value stored in y, and we are storing the resultant value in z. We are declaring and initializing a variable by using the let keyword. Next, in this example, we are not using let or we are not using where, but these variables are called as undeclared variables. Lecture out. After listening to this video lecture, students can write a JavaScript program by using variables. Reflections. This type of JavaScript language is oriented object-based assembly language, high-level object-oriented. What is the basic difference between JavaScript and Java? A. Functions are considered as fields. Functions are values, and there is no hard distinction between methods and fields. Variables are specific. Last option is there is no difference. Answer is B. Functions are values, and there is no hard distinction between methods and fields. Further reading, you can refer to text, and you can refer weekly tutorial sheets. Any queries? Thank you.